Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Pandora, as well as the season finale of the 100. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Pandora, you can skip to what I had to say about the season finale of the 100. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Pandora. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Obviously, you have Jack still reeling from, Greg's sacrifice last episode. And the sad thing is to kind of keep this whole thing a cover-up, which I'm sure that doesn't make it any easier. Only those who are on the end, side, like, her friends and everything who know the truth about everything. I don't even know if, like Thomas or Adria really know because they weren't there. We know Pilar and Xander know and Raylan, but I don't know who else knows. But essentially, it's a cover-up saying that, Greg just dropped out. Even the cadet that goes on the mission, she's like, oh, yeah, I dated Greg. It's kind of crazy that he just dropped out, right? And she has to be like, yeah, because basically Xander kind of pushes for her to, for Jack to be a part of this training exercise. Basically, it's all about someone taking over a commander position. But the training goes a little sideways when they get a distress call. They're ordered not to look into it, like help will be there in 10 hours. But in the grand scheme of things, it seems like, well, maybe there's a reason behind, let someone else handle that in 10 hours. Obviously, I'll get to that in a second. But maybe that whole situation was kind of a bit more known than what was kind of led on about what was really going on with that whole situation. But Jax convinces Xander, is like, no, we need to help people. Because look at her situation. If there was someone there the day New Portland got attacked, they would kind of feel bad knowing I could have stepped in and done something. It's like, we have the opportunity to help those people. And if anything happens to them, that's going to be on us when we had the opportunity to help, but we didn't. So to go check it out, kind of a zombie infestation type of almost thing. It's more so probably it's kind of a 28 days / 28 weeks later type of thing. But like I said, borderlines on the whole zombie thing to an extent. It turns out the research facility was messing with pathogens and stuff. And now the infection has spread and it kind of turns these people into these uncontrollable monsters that basically all your cognitive, all the human aspects, you kind of fade away till all you want to do is eat whatever you can get your hands on. And one of the cadets gets eaten early on in the episode, and that sucks. But the other cadet, she's working to help make the cure and everything. So obviously, the doctors that are there are very secretive about the whole situation, even not letting them look into the whole research, even though this is about helping, figure out what the hell is going on. But they're being so secret about it. It's like, well, why are you doing that? Well, it's because they have a lot to hide. Because Pilar looks into it, and it turns out, this whole place is connected to Parallax. And then later on, because it's like, okay, everyone's getting sick except for Raylan. And that's why I was kind of like, oh. Because I would think because at first I was like, that's interesting. And then they're making a point that he's a Atarian. I was like, is it supposed to kill him or something? And it turns out that is the point. Because it was an infection. It was a pathogen meant to make it so that humans wouldn't be infected, but Zatarians were. It was supposed to be something that could kill them without it ever pointing back to humans being responsible for it being made. But sadly, Zatarians and humans have similar enough biology that it kind of attacks humans. But Zatarians... different creatures handle pathogens different than others, and Zatarians are close biologically to humans, but they're different enough that their bodies handle pathogens differently. So his body is just straight up killing the infection inside of his body, whereas everyone else is heavily being affected, except for Jax, which comes as no surprise because the moment they were like, oh yeah, it goes after humans and no one else, but it's because he's a Zatarian. It's not affected. The moment they said that, I was like, and Jax isn't going to be affected either because she's something else. So her biology is different than that of a human. Maybe it mimics that of a human, but maybe there's a certain element to her biology that is able to kind of fight back any infection. I mean, that's probably going to be something that comes up later on. Has Jax ever been sick her entire life? That's probably a big question. But it turns out the whole situation is they were testing on dead Zatarians, and they're trying to be like, we didn't have anything to do with being dead. They were brought to us dead. But the whole point is humans were working on a means to do this. What's interesting though isn't just regular people, because we end up finding out later on from Parallax, in particular Regan and her dad, that it was actually Adari that had set the whole thing in motion, which is like, what are they up to? Because they're even talking about, oh, should we talk to the Seeker? And they're like, Regan's dad was like, no. Interesting enough, I was right. I saw in the opening credits, it is Ben Cross. I was like, holy crap. I thought so, but it's just like, as Rabbit from Banshee, he had blonde hair, so that kind of threw me off. But I was like, his face looks similar to Rabbit. So I was like, is that him? I wasn't sure, but turns out totally is him. So that's pretty cool. Which is interesting too, because I didn't even think about the connection. The actress, I'm going to butcher her name because I'm blanking on it right now. Her name's like Mila, isn't it? The actress who plays Dioza in the 100, she played his daughter, Anna, but her name later on got changed to Carrie when she was. It's a whole thing. She played his daughter in Banshee, so there's connections in that regard. That's just where my mindset was. I just thought that was kind of interesting when you actually break that down. Her name's not even Mila. It's like, ain't it like Ivana? I want to say her name's Ivana, but I feel like her last name's like an M, but I feel like I'm going to butcher it. Like I said, I'm blanking on it. It sucks so much that I'm messing up on it. Regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent. Obviously, Raylan not too happy about this because it's like, yeah, you're basically trying to wipe out my entire species. We're supposed to be at peace, but obviously everyone's just, literally everyone on both sides is waiting for a war. Either, the Zatarians are being edged on, hence why they're ready for war because, Osborn made that reference like the other episode. So, well, no, exactly. It was like the last episode he made a reference to that. So I'm wondering, is someone egging them on? Is it like Adara? Is it, Parallax? Like, it seems like they're more a medium in all of this. Like, basically, Parallax is getting something out of it. In particular, Regan and her dad. Like, whatever it is that those guys from the last episode on the Seahawk found for them, whatever the hell that was, it's a game changer, and it's kind of like either people bend to our will or basically they get wiped out type of situation. So it must be a weapon. I'm curious. It might have something to do with, Jax and the whole Pandora situation. Maybe not. But like I said, getting back to it, like you have the whole situation that even like the team is willing to support Raylan when he was like, oh, I'm not going to give you my blood, because it's like, oh, all you wanted was dead Zatarians, and now a living Zatarian is kind of the only thing that can save your hides. Because even Jax, which is kind of ironic, like it's super kind of messed up because she's there perfectly healthy. Granted, she doesn't realize she's perfectly healthy at the time, but you can tell she's perfectly healthy, and she's kind of laughing like, haha, you basically need Raylan's blood now to kind of survive. Sadly, one of the dudes didn't get to take, get a benefit from the situation because Xander ended up putting a bullet in his head because, phase laser in his head just because he ended up turning. And so they do manage to kind of make the cures. There was even that moment where like Raylan was killing some of the people along the way because they were, coming after them. But then Jax is like, we can cure these people, so don't do that. But sadly, because you even had that little remark from Raylan, which I think kind of speaks volumes, where he's like, well, they look cured to me. It's like, it's like obviously he's a little pissy because the whole situation is like, this was all meant to kill his people. So obviously you're not going to be in the best mood. But sadly, when it was all said and done, though, most of the cures got destroyed. The cadet, she ends up getting killed. I'm like, man, that sucks. I was at least hoping that at least one of the cadets would make it out of this. Nope. Yeah, it's that whole thing of, man, if you ain't a main character, you don't have plot armor. Hell, like Greg actually kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting you to kill off Greg literally in like the third episode, so that really took me by surprise. So I guess that Greg didn't have plot armor, at least not that we know of. Not unless it turns out like somehow he managed to escape by a daughter, but you never know. It just seemed like, wow, I wasn't expecting it. Regardless, so with all of that, there's only one cure left, but the doctor, she doesn't cure herself. She actually cures Xander because I think in, her mind, she felt bad about what she was doing. It's because like this is some top secret thing. We were basically going to lead to the help genocide an entire species. Like, it's that whole thing of like, because obviously the last episode was the whole point of like Zatarians and humans kind of coming together rather than pulling apart. But even with that mentality, even if Raylan has that mentality and not everyone else in the world does, there are those who are like-minded and those who aren't, and it's sad. But I thought it was kind of neat that she was like, yeah, I only had enough for one cure. She's like, maybe in the afterlife, basically, maybe there'll be some form of forgiveness for some of the stuff, even a modicum amount of forgiveness for what I've done. But then Raylan says, I think there is, kind of showing like, I understand, like, yes, what you did was despicable, but the fact is you doing that was a very honorable thing, to save Xander instead of saving herself. I was wondering if it was going to turn into that, like her, like, cause she held on to the cure. I was like, I thought she could have just held on to it and gave it to herself, but no. So, like I said, it was just kind of a sucky situation, when it was all said and done. Luckily, things kind of ended the way they did, kind of because Pilar was given orders by Xander to blow the facility. But when it's all said and done, like, there's no other cures to be made, and everyone else is just pure infected. There was already a cleanup crew heading that direction anyway, so there's not enough time to cure all those people, because if they're still there when the paralyzed crew gets there, they're going to be wiped out as well. That's why they were kind of on a time crunch to begin with. So it's kind of a sad situation, but like I said, everyone that was there was kind of already dead. I mean, who knows, like, whether or not there was whether the cure would have worked on all those people anyway, because they might have been too far gone. It might not be able to kind of regress, the progression of those, the infection when it's entered the final stage like that, So I would assume that is supposed to be like the end of that infection, because we shouldn't see it anymore, because that facility was the only one working at it, and all the research associated with it is burned up as well, so I'm curious, because I'm assuming like they set off the self-destruct, because like the Parallax ship hadn't arrived yet, so a lot of interesting things in that regard. I really thought it was interesting, the whole conversation between Xander and Jax about the whole thing of like, oh, why didn't I get infected? He's like, honestly, I wish I knew. It's like, no, you know more. He knows that this has something to do with her not being human, but obviously he's going to be hush-hush about it. I thought him almost dying was going to lead to him being like, okay, Jax, I got to tell you something, but then don't tell her something, but, regardless. He is pushing for her to be in that commander position, because it's like, for him, it's like he's worked by himself for so long, he kind of forgot what it's like to be a part of a team, to be responsible for other people's lives, and just like the heaviness that is associated with, because obviously losing 2 cadets like that, not just them, just those lives at the facility too, but more so the cadets, because those are the people he was the most responsible for. That was a point he was trying to get across to Jax. The fact is that she was like, oh, we got to do the right thing. It's like, yes, doing the right thing is one thing, but also all these other people that are part of your team, their lives are important too. And it's like, because they went through to save that mission, I mean, granted, you did a great thing because you made sure that research didn't fall in anyone's hands. Truth be told, you're kind of worse off, because you stopped all that, so you could be in the potential of saving, not just you literally saved an entire race of people, the Zatarians, by doing that, but at the same time you lost 2 people. So it's that thing of like, you got to make sure you're not taking too many chances, that you're looking after your people as a responsible commander, but also trying to do the right thing, like Jax is kind of driven to do. So it's kind of a give and take type of situation. Like, you can see the good and drawback to Jax's approach in this episode. Kind of applies to a certain element to like Thomas's whole thing. Like obviously, like Thomas and Atria doing their thing, and for her it's all about she just enjoys it, because it's like, hey, it's sex, whatever. It's always just been sex to her. Like, it just has been like, oh, if it's fun, blah 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 blah. But Thomas kind of adds in an element to it that she doesn't really quite understand. It's like the more emotional element. As a clone, she's never really thought of it as anything else more. Like, because obviously she's been told her entire life as a clone, like, oh, she was raised to believe like, oh, I don't have a soul. So him saying it like, oh yeah, like basically having sex should be more than just being this sex thing. It should be like basically making love, that there should be a heart and connection to it. But that's such a foreign thing to her. Like, obviously, even the whole going steady thing, I don't think he explained it well enough to her. But also to me, I'm like, it seems a little douchey that you want to change. It's like, oh, I guess you're like, it's impossible for you to change. I'm like, that's an asshole thing of you to say. Like, I get it, you're hurt because you like her, but she's not really vibing with it, because he's like, he can't read people's minds like his dad can, but he's like, I can read emotions. I know what you're feeling and what you're not feeling. So is it supposed to be like, oh, he knows that she does? So is it a thing of she does feel it to a certain extent, but she's like burying it and trying to pretend like she doesn't, but he knows that? Or is it a situation, because it just seems like you're almost kind of like forcing your way of, like, it's like, yeah, she's kind of lived her life a certain way and you want her to kind of conform to you. That's why it kind of seems a little pissy to me, the way he handled the situation. But I don't know, maybe that's me I'm usually not so cynical, but in this particular case, I'm like, that's a little cynical me. I'm usually Mr. Positive when it comes to love. Like, I'm very optimistic. I once again have a very fantasized notion of love, so that definitely describes me, but I feel like so cynical when it comes to that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wanted them to be together, especially when Greg makes it clear in the first episode. Like, oh, you could definitely tell, like, there's something there that they care about each other. But it's just like the way he went about it this episode. Like, once again, maybe it's just a situation he knows more than I don't. Like I said, maybe it could be a situation of she did feel something, but, you know, she wasn't quite ready to embrace it. Or maybe it's just supposed to be a thing of, like, she wasn't sure. I mean, when you see the way he kind of gets angry at her, and you see that look like, no, can we talk, please, Tom? It's like, it seems like there is something there. So I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of the two. That's just, like I said, that's just how I'm feeling about it. I mean, they kind of make up at the end, you know, by her trying to make it clear, like, because at first she's talking to that dude, she sees that Thomas keeps looking, so I think she was trying to make a grand gesture to be like, no, I will not have a sexual relation with you anymore, and kind of does the "what's up" thing with Thomas. So I thought that was kind of neat. It's just kind of interesting. Like I said, me just being very cynical about the whole situation. That's how I just broke it down, you know. So another thing that those two potentially don't know anything about, like, oh yeah, what happened to your attorney? Yeah, that's top secret, so we can't kind of talk about it, you know. So nevertheless, I'm very interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, especially because of all of this. I believe Jax is going to start wondering, like, okay, yeah, there's something up with me. I think she's going to start looking into this more and more, potentially finding out what Xander knows and what her uncle knows, considering her uncle knows pretty much everything about what's going on. Xander knows bits and pieces. He's figured some of the stuff out, but even he's not in the know of everything that Osborn knows. So maybe that's something we'll see Jax kind of looking into more and more. Maybe certain things start not aligning anymore. Maybe she starts looking into her own DNA, into her heritage. Like, you know, I'm curious, like, to see where all that heads. And now moving on to the season finale of the 100. A great season finale. There is a lot that went down in this episode we have to break down. So obviously we have everything, starting off with everything in space, with him threatening Maddie, Gaia's life. And obviously Indra is like, no, you kill them, we kill you. But obviously Clark trying to play the role as like, oh, threatening Gaia because she knows Indra's not going to act upon anything at that point. So now it's an interesting situation about how they plan on handling this situation going forward. The primes, essentially their plan is to go to the next planet and the next, because they at least name a few. There's like Beta, there's Delta. So that's interesting that, like, obviously it's like, even if we don't go, because it seems like not everything was fully explored, because all the Allegiance 3 ended up exploring fully, or at least to a certain extent, not fully, but was Alpha. So they don't even know what the other places are like, because they even said like, oh, getting to Beta would take like 20 years or something like that. So the whole conversation is, well, what do we do? Can't trust Maddie, because the moment Maddie got an opportunity, she told her people to attack. They did without hesitation. So it's like, okay, so what do we do? Well, we can't kill her because, one, we need her as a black blood. Two, we also need to make sure that with her alive, she at the very least can keep her people under control, and we're going to need them, not unless you want to kind of act as kind of our own servant. So even in this position, they're still like, oh, we need someone to basically serve us. I mean, so, because it's interesting, we never got the thing about like how they were going to handle the whole comeback situation. I'm wondering, like I said, my thought process is they're going to wait till all the generations, until like generations down the line where like everyone in Sanctum eventually ends up dying or killing themselves or killing each other, and then eventually later on down the road, come back generations later, and it's like, we're still here alive, and then reclaim Sanctum as their own. That's what it seemed like they were kind of implying last episode. So obviously you have Clark kind of being okay with everything, because like the whole plan is like to basically kill all of the people in their sleep, all those still on cryo, because at least that way it's like, oh, we don't even have to worry about knowing them. Kind of like some of the people are like, because one person in particular is like, yeah, we don't even have to know them. I guess that's how you kind of get away guilt-free from having to kill someone. At least this way, it's like you don't get to know them personally. Other times it's like those were people you got to know first before their body ended up getting hijacked, you know? So it's like we're explorers and stuff like that. It's Russell's, justification and stuff like that. But then you have that scene of like, okay, like, Clark, she's talking to Simone and being like, oh, no, like, you got any flashes or anything? Just trying to see if like there's any part, the device in Abby, to see if it really got burned out, like the one that was inside of Clark that kind of kept their consciousness, like kept her consciousness around long enough. But they made it clear to be like, nah, like the device that was there is like, obviously it's already going. So it's like, no, like this is 100% Simone. And that moment, the realization, you see Clark's heart drop, because for her, she was holding out just the tiniest bit of hope that maybe what happened to her and Josephine happened to her mom. But it's like, no, there's nothing for her mom left. And she pulls the gun out, and in that real, because when they see her kind of back away and not letting them try and kill all the people that were asleep, it's like, you're not our daughter. Our Josephine's gone. And she's like, and I mean this in all honesty, you won't believe me, but I am sorry for your loss. Even though Josephine, once again, was kind of a psychopath, but she's a product of this whole situation, of like living for so long warps your mind. And even, like I said, like she was the least sympathetic of everyone. Obviously, I say like after her is probably Simone and then Russell. Like Russell was sympathetic in certain regards, but nevertheless, when it's all said and done, though, you had like Simone pretending to be like, oh, Abby. I was like, oh, don't fall for it, Clark. Please don't fall for it. Clark was a little hopeful, but she was skeptical. She's like, what's my dad's name? But Simone couldn't answer. And it's like, oh. And then Clark opens the hatch and like they all get floated. And it's to the point like Simone is still holding on, and just reluctantly Clark has to push her away because she knows that's not my mom anymore. And she didn't say it, because my thought last episode was like, of course Clark's not going to let someone run about in her mom's body. Like, especially knowing that there's no hope to bring her mom back. At the very least, it's some silver lining that wherever this all ends, that, Abby and Kane are reunited, in the grand scheme of things. That's the only thing you can hope for, with that. And it's sad that Clark has to do that, because she's now like, both of her parents are gone now, and that's why she was struggling so hard with this Maddie thing. Is like, no. I literally just lost my mom today. I can't lose you too. Like, you're like my family. I can't let you go. I can't let you die. Because sadly, they were in the process of getting rid of Shade Hater, but basically it's a situation to get rid of him. You literally have to wipe the entire flame. So that's a whole thing. But kind of leaving them little to no choice. And they try to start process, but it doesn't work. It's actually kind of interesting, because even Indra's like, oh, I met him long ago when I was a little girl. He went from village to village, wiping everyone out, killing families. And she was like, there was no one spared. It's like, we cannot let a monster like that out into the world. And even Gaia taking it upon herself. If need be, if this doesn't work, I will kill Maddie myself. But when the time came, like Shade Hater was taking control, and he says a line of like, oh yeah, like I can control, like I can help you get ultimate revenge. The girl doesn't even, the girl here isn't even here anymore. I'm in kind of control, and so Russell is working alongside Shade Hater, and Clark, puts a gun to her head. It's like, Maddie, I know you're in there somewhere. If you can fight to the surface, or I'm gonna kill myself. And just when she's counting down, Maddie kicks in and is able to fight Shade Hater, but he's on the inside trying to kill her. So they end up wiping the flame. It wasn't just deleting him, it was like wiping the flame. And so it's actually kind of sad, because like that means like everything that was there is gone. Because I know they were trying to just wipe him away, but my understanding was that they wiped the entire flame. Not unless I did get it wrong. Correct me in the comments down below if that is the case, but I was under the impression it's like that was the only choice that was really available to them in this moment. Like, they had to wipe it completely. That's why they also had to pull the flame out afterwards. The only way to kind of make Maddie wake up. It's sad too, because it's like there were other good commanders there, like Lexa for example. But for Shade Hater, it was like, oh, your weakness. Even calling out Clark, her love for Maddie being weak, and it's like, oh, Lexa had said that you were so strong. But Clark's compassion in her heart is what kind of makes her strong. And that heart and compassion was able to push past you and get to Maddie. But part of me was worried. I was like, oh, please don't tell me this is a trap. Please. But it's like, no, once we saw the inside, I'm like, no. Maddie's there fighting. And luckily we see that she was the only one left before the flame was taken out. So it's like, yes. It's like things kind of work out in that. And it's actually kind of sad too. There's like levels and levels of sad, because it's like, oh, Clark, it's like, Raven's like, oh, Clark, how'd you get in here? She was like, I used Shaw's failsafe code, which is like, oh, it's kind of like a reminder of like, oh yeah, don't forget Shaw died at the beginning of the season. Not like it was saying that, but obviously, it probably was, hearing that, you could see Raven kind of tilt her head down a little low. Like, obviously that's still a fresh enough wound for her. And on top of that, she lost Abby too, because she's apologizing. She's being like, I'm so sorry about Abby to Clark, but obviously losing Abby hurt her too. Like, Abby was the closest thing she's had to a mother in all of this, So there's that whole situation. It turns out, like, there are zealots amongst this whole, like, this whole Prime situation, that they're like giving people the blood of Sanctum, which apparently it's real blood, but it also has a good chunk of toxin blood, the red sun toxin in it, to the point that it's even more potent than what was in the bomb that Russell had used, because a lot of people are just crazy. Like, if you're already like, it targets that part of you, especially if you're a hardcore believer, like who they are at their core, like anything inside of their minds questioning their beliefs is kind of being overtaken, because you rather latch onto what you believe in rather than kind of let something take your faith away from you, because it's basically been passed out for generation and generation that this is the way things are, and it's a core value. It's kind of all that you hold on to, and when that's all there is to you, all you have, obviously that's kind of hard to let go, to the point they were going to kill people. They ended up killing Xavier's sister, which I was like, oh man, that sucks. But luckily you had John and Amori get there in time to help. And I love Murphy being like, so who's the hero now? But when the time comes, they're tracking down Jordan. They're trying to get inside of the palace with Gabriel, because there was a moment where John kisses a dude, but the dude was like, he doesn't recognize me. What's up with that? Like, kind of like, oh, that's going to be an issue. But I also love it too. It's like, Gabriel wants to go back out there to save other people, because one of the other people still left is one of his friends, obviously one of the children of Gabriel. So it's like, I got to go help him. But Murphy's like, nah, my people are here. I've kind of done my part. If I could help the people in space right now, I would, but I've kind of done my part, so I can't help. But Octavia isn't willing to back down. She's like, I got to help these people. And Bellamy's like side by side, so he's going to help. And Octavia's like, Echo's like, well, we got to do better, right? And then you have, Amori being like, yeah, I'm down for it too. And John's like, what? No, come on. But it's like, no, we have to do this, but it can't be Amori. It has to be John. And I love John being like, all right, if I get killed, you got to bring me back. He's like, I'm not going to. And he's like, at the very least, lie to me. And he just he's just like, being a god is supposed to be fun. I even love it too when he knocks that guy out later. He's like, I'm really sorry about this. You seem like a nice guy. You're even a good kisser too. So I thought that was pretty dope. Because I thought that was going to turn out to be a bigger issue. Like they had their suspicions of John, but like it didn't come down to it, because by the time it happened, they ended up taking everyone down. Gabriel would be like, what took you so long? It's like, my dude was a little tougher to knock out. So, but then you had the people outside, that lady in particular being a fanatic, she getting the others riled up to burn the place down. It's like, those are your people in there. And it's like, yeah, we're saving them by killing them, because if, at least this way, they'll, I guess, be reunited with the, Primes, like, they'll got to be forgiven for their treachery of not believing. And so you have Octavia, Bellamy, and Echo fighting all these people, all trying not to kill them, except the last lady, she sets herself on fire just to show how fanatic she is. And the sad thing is, because even Gabriel had apologized, and like, I'm sorry that's what happened to you. The adjustment, like how you see what kind of effect it has on someone, it breaks them down until that's all they have. And when it's all said and done, like, luckily Octavia was able to stop her before she could set the building on fire, but without literally burning herself alive like that was crazy, dude. So a lot of interesting things to kind of break down about that in itself. One, the Octavia thing of like, she's got these symbols on her back, and it's like, whoa, what the hell is that? It's from like the anomaly stone or something. So it's like, you were definitely in there in more than a couple seconds. Once again, it's like, we still don't 100% know everything that went down in that anomaly, but it's something that's, something that Gabriel's been trying to solve for a very long time. All the while this is happening, there's everything on the ship. What was interesting, like, they never cut back to explaining what that was, but that uploading. Like, what the hell was that? Like, I didn't really catch what it was they said. I was like, is that the flame being uploaded into the ship system? Is that what that was supposed to be? So are the people still there? They just have to be re-downloaded into a new flame, or that flame? Like, Shade Hader is gone, but everyone else got uploaded. I think that's what that was saying. Because you have Gaia kind of holding on to the flame, because obviously it's like, that's part of her religious belief, and now it's kind of all gone. And, even Maddie being like, I'm no longer the commander. But I think, and it shows, like, Gaia's like, I don't care. As long as you're okay, that's fine, so that responsibility has been taken from Maddie. But I am curious to see in the long run, when that explanation comes up of like, okay, so what's going to happen with the Maddie thing now that she is no longer commander? Like, will people still follow her? Like, what about One Crew? Like, what's that whole situation going to be like going forward, especially with all the people that were frozen and stuff like that? That's a whole big thing in itself. I'm curious about, A big thing to kind of consider too is the whole Jordan situation. What we saw Jordan, like, he was in that adjustment thing. He's probably been through the adjustment process ever since he got stabbed, but we haven't seen him in a good amount of episodes. So it's like, yeah, he's probably being adjusted the entire time. And then Bellamy's asking him at the end, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, but who are we to bring, like, basically crash these people's beliefs?" The fact of the matter is, yeah, they weren't perfect, but the fact of the matter is they were better off before we got here, which is so interesting considering the fact is you had such an issue. You're literally the one that started all this by bringing it to their attention that Delilah wasn't Delilah anymore. So that's what it's kind of like, but it's that thing of like, I'm kind of scared because I think he might go down the Jasper route. They might be setting him up to go down that route, and I hope not. But it might be set up to be like he's like been adjusted. So like the whole Prime situation. There was even a dude that was sitting behind him that was kind of looking at direction. I was like the fact of the matter is we have no telling, like, because like I said, Jordan could have been under for a long time. Russell isn't dead, Russell is still alive, and so there's the other primes and stuff. So like, yes, Simone is gone, so is Josephine. There's no bringing them back, but what about the other primes and their mind drives and whatnot? So the question then becomes like, could it be a situation of we see Jordan step up and become a fanatic potentially in the future and tries to set Russell free to kind of bring this whole system back? Because it's like, because the whole point that they try to make is like, we come here to do better, but it's like, did we do better? We came, but it's like, in comparison to the past, I think this is the best outcome, because for him, it's like, oh, who are we? What truth? Like, this was these people's truth. But it's like, no, they were perpetuating this lie. They were killing innocent people. But like I said, it's hard to say whether that's 100% Jordan saying that just because Jordan believes that. Is it him acting out of grief because he blames Bellamy? He's like, oh, I heard that you're the one that got, Priya killed. But it's like, no, the truth got her killed. But, it's like in Jordan's mind, it's semantics. Because let's not all forget, like, but that thing is, Delilah wasn't alive anymore, but it doesn't matter to him because it's still, he would have, obviously he knew that was the case. He still protected Priya regardless, but that's because in his mind, I think he was still holding on to like, that's her life. But maybe it's just like, hey, my parents kind of instilled me to kind of preserve all life. So he was going to do that regardless, So it's like, even if she took Delilah, even if that is Priya, the fact of the matter is I'm still going to look after her. I mean, to be fair, her family's dead anyway. Well, I mean, let's not forget Riker. Last time we saw Riker she had Riker's mind drive. The fact is, all we saw was them kill her body, but her mind drive could still be intact. Once again, it comes down to whether or not all those mind drives were collected afterwards or what. Did they destroy all of them? Like, they're probably going to leave them in their mind drives and kind of leave them arrested, like kind of keep them in cold storage, essentially. Like, that's their way to kind of be in prison. It's kind of interesting, once again, because I made the parallels to Altered Carbon, which kind of has a similar thing in that regard. So I'm wondering, is that how they're going to handle that potentially? Like, I get the feeling like something shady's about to happen with Jordan. He might end up turning against everyone. Once again, might be me reading too much into it, but it seemed like they said that, especially because he was holding that jewel at the end, and that was something for Priya, or rather Delilah, wasn't it? I think so. So we'll have to see on that front. Kind of even tying into that was a whole conversation between Bellamy and, Clark about like, oh, the fact of the matter is I tried to do better. I did. And because of it, I lost my mom. So was it all worth it in the end? And Bellamy's trying to tell her that obviously, yeah, you did do better. And we did. Like, the fact of the matter is it kind of was worth it in the end because we are here and we did do better, So living up to, the sacrifice that Harper and Monty made, that they wanted them to be better, So, I mean, that's that horror thing of like living up to someone's expectations, like, but I think they did the best they could. Like, the fact is, I mean, that's the thing, like, were they in the right to tell these people the truth? But like, this is a life that they had led, even though it was a lie, it was still their life. So is it really your right to come in and tell people what's wrong about the way they're living? I don't know, especially when there is wrong in the way that you're living, because people are being sacrificed, not just for some greater good, to perpetuate this BS that these people are gods when they're just flesh and blood like anyone else, just using technology to their advantage, I guess everyone, from the ship and everything that's awake, along with all the people, that's going to be an adjustment period of like, living their lives as their own for now, never having to, I'm sure there's still going to be those who are just, obviously those that died because of like Russell's gas and whatnot. I'm sure there's going to be people who want Russell executed, but it's like, that's not how we're going to handle things. Maybe it is. I don't know. That might be a divide amongst the groups of just how things should be handled, but it's going to be a big adjustment period. Funny use of the word considering like obviously the whole adjustment program they have, but it's definitely gonna be interesting to see where things gotta go on that front. Like, Sanctum gonna be their new home or what? Then there's a whole situation with the anomaly stone. Like obviously there's like a certain combination there they put it in. Lo and behold, the anomaly grows because it seems like this stone is what kind of controls the anomaly. There's actually like a magnetic field that holds it up, so it's like we don't know who made it, like what keeps the magnetic field going, but it spreads the anomaly until it encompasses the camp. Lo and behold, who comes out? Hannah, not Hannah, I don't know why I said Hannah, Hope. So that's interesting because that was the conversation I was bringing up. It's like, is Hope going to be like what they're going to do with that whole situation? But she walks out and she says, I'm sorry, I couldn't get her out of it. He has my mom. So it's like there's a civilization inside of that anomaly. It doesn't just stop there. So there's definitely something in that. And then she apologizes and she ends up stabbing Octavia in the stomach, and then Octavia whispers something. I couldn't quite make out what she said, and then she gets sucked into the anomaly and disappears, but Hope stays behind. And it's like, wait, what? Was it a situation where, like, why did she pass out? Was it something Octavia said to her? Was it just a strain of the anomaly? Like, because obviously the whole thing is Octavia is important in all of this, considering the fact is she had the message on her back. Once again, going back to like whatever happened to Diosa, what happened in that time frame when Octavia was going, because we didn't get those answers because she was dealing with her personal demons rather than finding out what happened in the anomaly. Maybe get filled in from Hope about what's going on in there. That's a crazy way to end off the season. News has come out that the show has been renewed for a 7th season. Interestingly enough, I was reading, apparently it got renewed even before the 6th season even had started. But this news has come out this month, probably just like within like the past 2 days or whatever, that this 7th season will be the final season of the 100, which is kind of crazy to think about. But it's one of those things where it seems like, from what I was reading at the very least, it seems like it might be a thing of like, the showrunner might be behind, like going like, yeah, I'm ready to wrap the show up potentially, which I'm always a fan of. Like I obviously said, this is just me reading a little bit. Maybe there's more context to it, but from what I was reading a little bit, it seemed like it was the creator's decision, the showrunner's decision to end it, which once again, I'm always happy for a show to get a proper ending because someone decided to end it. I'm always happy that even if, it's kind of a last minute thing, there's always the opportunity for a final season, not just a final episode. You get what I'm trying to say. I'm going in on a whole tangent, but that begs the question, how is this going to finish up? From what I was reading, it seems that this final season is going to have 16 episodes, which obviously that's something like the 100 has done in the past, but only for like 1 or 2 seasons. But most seasons have been 13. So it's definitely going to be interesting, especially with this whole anomaly thing, whatever the hell that ends up being. Like, there's a lot of threads that I'm curious to see how they end up wrapping everything up. Because I made a point of like this whole Octavia thing. It's kind of sad that this is happening now, especially after her and Bellamy are finally on good terms again. Just there's this also, this once again, this season was full of so much damn loss. I mean, holy crap, we lost Kane, we lost Abby. Holy crap. Technically we lost Diosa, but Diosa's still kicking. She's just most likely older and inside the anomaly. Once again, it's like that's something I'm sure that's going to be the biggest focus next season. But I think, like I said, the subplot is probably going to be about, those, I don't know. It might not even be necessarily about the primes anymore. It might just be that Jordan, maybe not even others, but maybe just Jordan, like I said, fills that role of kind of being like Jasper. We might kind of see kind of a repeat of that just because of that similarities of having lost someone and you kind of think it's someone else's fault when in actuality, but it's like his mindset, it's like, oh, we were supposed to come here and be better, but all we did is destroy this, but it's like this world was already kind of screwed up to begin with, and it's just I don't know. It's a very complicated situation. Once again, just because I'm biased, I'm always going to side with our heroes, no matter how complicated the choice may be. I think they kind of did the best that they could in the grand scheme of things, So like I said, I'm very, very interested to see what they have in store for us with this final season. I would assume it's all going to take place on Alpha. I'm sure exploring the other planets, that might be a little thing that it's like generations down the road. However, season 7, the final season plays out, maybe they'll have explored the other planets or whatever, considering the fact is that this is legitimately all that's left of humanity. There's no more like, it's like, no, this is it. So got to make it count type of situation and kind of put down roots. And because obviously there's more about this planet we have to explore, but it's kind of interesting, like I said, because it seems like the anomaly is going to be the main thing. I wonder if inside of the anomaly we're actually going to go to the future. We might do some time traveling in that regard. So like when Octavia went in, she probably got flung to the future of Alpha, where things are potentially different. That might have something to do with our characters too. Like she might end up running into like older versions of some of the characters. Maybe that might be why Hope is also older. We might have kind of a paradox thing of like, she's actually still a baby inside of Diosa's stomach, but she's also an adult, maybe already, probably not. Or whether, I'm curious, is it the thing of like, because they were probably there for years if Hope looks the way she is, because she was still a baby inside of Diosa, so she's like a teenager now, if not in her early 20s. So you'd assume like they were there for a very, very long time. But then again, Octavia came out sometime afterwards, so it could have been a thing of like when she saw Hope last, Hope might have been a little girl, but now she's older. Because when Diosa had her vision, she saw Hope as a little girl, so that might mean something. Once again, this is me overthinking a lot of stuff, but get your brain thinking about the possibilities of what we could see. I'm also curious to see about the Black Blood situation, like whether that's going to have any effect or not, because Echo is still a Black Blood. She's walking away from this season being a Black Blood, but will that have any effect? I have no idea what that could potentially be, especially potentially with the whole thought that maybe the commanders got uploaded on the computers on the ship or something like that. Other elements to this where I'm like, I don't know what that could be. I'm so interested to see how it, all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.